guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I did a video a while ago on the sewing notebooks that I use to kind of help organize my projects. And now that it's a new year, I wanted to kind of come back and show you how things have been going and also talk about some of my goals for 2020, because at this point, I've actually been sewing for about 9 months now, and I have just finished up this notebook. So I thought that was a pretty good time to come back on here and give you guys an update and show you the new notebook that I'm going to be using. So I've got this pen out. This is just kind of the pen that I've been using in my notebooks, just to give you an idea. Nothing fancy. It's a UNIBALL Signo 0.38 point, and yeah, just a black pen. Anyway, so let's take a look. I've got a little pile of things here. These are all kind of sewing things. So I want to first show you guys my completed project notebook. So this is a little notebook that Claire sent me of Minimal Plan, and I just have used it as my completed projects notebook. So I just have my name, the dates when I was actually working on these projects. So I actually did finish the last project in here in January. So it did go into the new year, and then it's just my sewing projects. I have measurements, which I'm actually going to do an updated version of this because I don't have all the measurements and things have changed, but this was at least a way for me to not have to completely remeasure myself every single time I was making a new pattern, which was very handy. So as you guys saw in the last video, I basically just have a title. So what was the item, what was the pattern, a little sketch of the piece that I made, so either the garment or the bag or whatever. I have when I made it, the style or size, depending on what information was given in the pattern, the material I used, and any random notes. So for example, this is one that I made that much later, so in December, I actually added buttonholes and a drawstring up here. So I basically just kept track of everything I made, or just about everything. There might have been some little things that I threw together that I didn't actually give a spread to. This is actually when it was just a fix, and I ended up not keeping this dress. I ended up donating the dress because even after fixing it, I was like, I won't wear this. This is just not my style. Like, I tried, but it's not gonna work. So I ended up donating that one. And then, yeah, this, I don't even remember with the last video how much you guys, like how much I had filled this out when last I did a video on it, but basically just enough so that if I want to make the item again, I have some information to remind me. If I did any fixes after I had finished it, I tried to include those in the notes. This was a test pair of shorts, and so I have a lot of notes on here because I had to, know what I wanted to change for the second version, and then for the second version I made notes again for what I want to change for the third version. Still working on the third version. It's been a process. So just kind of, so for example here I noted how far in from the side seam I put my little ties. And I noted this was a second ruffle top that I made, and I just noted what I changed in terms of the pattern based on the original pattern that I used, so that if I make it again, I remember that that was what I actually did. Here, this is my second test, so notes on that. So I like keeping my finished projects separate from my projects to be planned, because especially for things that I have notes on, it's much easier to go back and find which version I made that I then need to look at the notes for if everything is all in one place and not mixed together with things that I haven't done yet. So that's kind of why I have a dedicated notebook for this rather than putting everything all in one. You can see I accidentally made this just way too big, so I whited out the edges there to make it a little bit more to scale. So yeah, this is just basically 9 months worth of sewing, and it was a lot of fun. I actually, looking back through is really fun because I'm like, wow, I actually made a lot of things, and it's interesting to see how much of these have just like become part of my daily life, things that I wear, things that I use, and it's, I don't know, it's a really kind of fun reflection to go back through this. So getting kind of near the end here. So this was my quilt. I did not even try to draw the designs. Like for the coasters, I tried to draw the designs for some of them. For the quilt, I was just like, nah, I'm not even going to. I just did the rough shape of like how I did my little triangles. So this was actually a self-drafted-ish. I kind of used based on some of the rough measurements from the Fennel fanny pack, which I'll try and link down below. But I didn't make a fanny pack, I actually made a purse for my grandmother, so I had a lot of notes over here for doing this, so that if ever I need to make it again, I have the notes written down to do so. So these are my little pattern weights. I know they look kind of like weird donuts. And this is the end of this book. So I am done in this particular sewing project notebook. So I will go ahead and show you guys my new one. So I did a review of the Clear Habit Journal back, I don't even know when. I'll try and post a link up there, so if you haven't checked it out and you want to, you can. But I've had this notebook for several months at this point. I don't even know how long. And you know, I have a stash of notebooks that I just don't have a use for. And so when I finished my project notebook, I was like, okay, I need a new one. What notebook am I going to use? It's like, hey, why don't we use this one? So what I decided to do is, this is an experiment. I've decided I want to try doing a couple of things. We'll see how long it actually lasts, how useful it actually is, but like, why not? So I just have, again, my name, sewing projects, and when I actually started it. Then, all right, so got all of these like things here. I haven't done any indexing yet because I haven't really started using this yet. I just set this up like 2 or 3 days ago. So what I'm thinking that I want to do is on the 1 line a day, rather than doing a 1 line a day per se, I want to do skills practice. So things that I've learned how to do, things that I've practiced. For example, I learned, or I did for the first time, a flat felled seam. And so that was something, I did that for the first time. And so I want to write down like if I do it again kind of thing. Again, this is one that I don't know how useful this information is, but I figure it would be interesting to see if there are things like, you know, learning to sew with knits or working on hand sewing, stuff like that, that it might be kind of fun to go back at the end of the year and say, oh man, I learned a ton of skills and I can now do all of these things. I don't know, we'll try it. So this, I just have skills practice, so I remember after the fact what I actually had. I only write things down on days when I actually sew and or learn or practice a new skill, and then I have circled the month over here. So just have all of those for the year. Let's see. This is going to be, so the notebook portion is going to basically be this part of my notebook. So any finished projects are going to go in here. I actually haven't finished any projects yet in this notebook, so it is currently blank. But then the last thing I have is, so the notebook, this will last me a lot longer. That was one of the other reasons why I decided to do this. I was thinking that it might be nice to have something that would last, you know, longer than a year, depending on, I don't think I'm going to always sew that much. It was just a new thing I was learning, and so I was doing a lot of sewing, but I think it'll slow down a little bit with time. So I have a lot of space for stuff over there. And then for the habit trackers, oops, there we go. I decided to do a yearly one. So I've basically just written what the habit is. So it's sewing, and then I'll just write the month in over here. And then I just do a little X on days that I actually sew, because I kind of like to see how often I sew during a month and during the year in general, to see like how much of a habit it is and how often I take time to even do a little something. We'll see how it goes. Again, it's not a super necessary thing to track, but why not? And I also did for, whoops, here we go. I also did for knitting. I just did this one so that when I fill them in, I don't have to like flip the notebook around. So I did same thing for knitting. I don't knit nearly as often as I sew, so this will probably be much less filled out, but you know. So what I figure is I don't need a lot of habits for this kind of stuff. So if this notebook, as I hope it does, lasts for longer than a year, then I can go ahead and use the habit trackers for future years. And then I just won't necessarily have this to fill in, but like that's not a big deal. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. I needed a new notebook, so I figured why not kind of play around with this, because it is, you know, sewing and sort of textile crafts in general. That's relatively new for me. I mean, I've only been doing this kind of stuff really regularly for about 9 months, so I figured it might be kind of fun to utilize some of the habit side of things to help track some stuff. So that is my new notebook. What I've got next is a couple of, or what I've got next are a couple of different little things over here. So I showed you guys inside, my project planning notebook, and I figured I'd just give you a quick little update of what I've got in here. So I probably need to update my index at some point. I've got a couple more things on the fabric wish list. I went through actually recently and I updated my tops. So at the end of the year, I actually bought and got a bunch of different patterns. And so I've kind of been planning some different projects, and that is where these come in. So I realized that I was doing a ton of this like random little project planning stuff on scratch pieces of paper because I wasn't sure how like solid these plans were at that point. And so I went through eventually and I did. So these are things I need to do. So for example, prepping patterns. You know, I print and prep my patterns at home, and so I need to know which patterns, I've got them in my pattern box, but which patterns have I printed but not actually like put together yet. These are for things that I need to kind of work on. These are some ideas for things. These are things that I've done. I've prepped the pattern, but I haven't actually traced my size yet because I need to figure out what size to trace. Patterns that I've bought that I would like to print and assemble. Things that I want to work on mending or fixing. Fabric that I've bought that I've earmarked for different things, so I need to work on those. Random notes. So I currently have all of these little pieces of paper that at some point need to get dealt with and ideally put in here. But for the time being, I just am not quite ready to deal with that. However, I did take some time to work on doing some other little things in here. For example, I want to work on doing some bodysuits to wear under high-waisted pants so that I don't have to worry about my shirt untucking itself. I have a couple of box tops that I want to make. I want to make another Demeter tank top. I want to make another Monroe turtleneck. So just kind of updating a couple of things here. And the way that I do it is I basically write the number so that I know the number corresponds with the little drawing. And then once I've done it, I cross off the box. So this gives me a running list, and this gives me what the item actually is. So depending on what I'm looking for, like, hey, I really want to work on doing a turtleneck. Okay, it's number 12. Look over here. Oh yeah, I was planning on doing a Monroe. So it's just kind of a way of indexing the different garments that I want to work on making. I also updated pants, so bottoms is how I've labeled that because it could also be skirts. And I've got a couple things on here that I haven't actually drawn little doodles for, but these are kind of ones that are things I want to work on sooner, I guess, sooner rather than later. I also did for my dresses, and as you can see, I don't really worry about my doodles being super neat or pretty, just they're basically a visual reminder of the item that I want to actually make. And things get changed. Sometimes I have to, you know, I planned on making something and I end up whiting it out because I decide I don't actually want to make that. So I try to keep this as up to date as possible. But a lot of these are definitely more like long-term things. Like this is stuff that's going to take me a good long while to actually get through. So it just sort of is a running list of things that I want to make. So got outerwear over here, started doing some ideas for some other all-wear cardigan coats that I want to wear. I actually got the pattern for the opium coat because I have wanted to make that basically since I started sewing. So I finally got the pattern, so next step is going to be looking for fabric. Then some other like home stuff. I had to do a lot of updating on this one actually. Still need to make my Morning Glory top. Have not actually done that, but I do still have all of the steps in here, which is nice. So these are more into my specific patterns, notes, you know, variations I want to make, notes from the tester. So these are what I do as I'm going through. So I can either go through my project notebook and look at each test version, or I can come to the project page in here and see all of my notes for all of the tests in one place. So depending on kind of what I'm looking at, I have them multiple places. I know it's sort of redundant, but for something like shorts, I'd rather have more notes rather than fewer because pants are such a fussy thing for me to actually fit for myself. So there we go. I self-drafted a wallet insert, and so I made the first one, and then I finally made the second one and realized that I had just done this, and I didn't have any of the steps. So after I had done the second one, I was like, I should probably write the steps in there, because in a year or two, if I need to make a new one, I'm not going to remember what I actually did. So there we go. This is for the elasticated back hack, because I wanted to make sure I had that in case I make it again. I have all the information I need, so I don't have to go and find the blog post. And again, I did some tester versions, so notes on that. Some ideas for some menswear pieces that I'd like to make for myself. Again, not very fleshed out, but I will work on that eventually. So I did some notes for here. I wanted to do a tester of the bodice for this dress because I wasn't sure which size I needed to do. And then when I made the real one, I made some notes. You know, this was the style I want to make and the fabric I want to use. And so after having made this one, I made some notes for if I make this again, what do I want to adjust or try or change? This, I finally wrote down projects that I have cut out. So things that I've done that I need to mend or fix, which I'm actually doing pretty well on that, and things that I've cut out that I need to actually sew, just because things get sort of shuffled around in my apartment, and I can always come here and say, what do I actually have like waiting to be done, sort of thing. And this is one that I'll probably end up just using the second page as like a continuation, because I don't really need to do a sketch of these types of things. So this was another one of like trying to get my stash under control. So these are things in my stash that I already know what I want to make with the fabric. These are fabrics that I don't quite know what I want to do. I need to dye some raw silk that I got, and then these are for patterns that I have in my stash that I want to make, or like variations of the pattern that I want to make. Again, this is kind of exploded since I did this. I have a lot more, which is where these come in, but when I first started out, this was a good way for me to kind of keep on top of things. This is for the bodysuit that I want to do. I, as you can see, have not gotten very far on that yet. This is for all-well cardigan coats, undergarments. So this is actually for a swimsuit. It's one of the things I'd like to work on making this year. Ideas for Lady Sherlock, which I would like to work on. Things that I have in my closet that need to get replaced because they either don't fit as well as I would like them to, or they've gotten so old that I really need to retire them, but I really like the piece and so I want to have it again. And then these are refashion, is for things that I have in my closet that I like the fabric of, but that I no longer wear. So I'd like to try and take the fabric and all of the hardware and stuff and make it into something else. So that is the end over here. So I do still have a ton of space left in here, which is fantastic. Oh, I forgot about this. I have some more measurements in the back here. I really need to do a consolidated measurements page. I just haven't really sat down to do it. So at some point, I would like to kind of take all of this information and get it in this notebook. I just haven't had a chance to do so. So the next thing I kind of want to show you is something I'm doing new for this year. Is I've made some goals for 2020, and oops, let's see, I tend to keep my elastic over here just so I can easily flip to this page, but I'll move it so we can actually read it. So I, at the end of the year, was like, okay, I have a lot of random things that I want to work on sewing, but I also have some bigger projects that if I just kind of leave them in the back of my mind, I'm never going to get to, because it's going to take planning to actually make them happen. It's not just going to be, you know, oh, I can make this shirt because I have this stuff at home. It's I need to go and actually buy fabric, or I need to buy notions, or like I need the pattern for this. So I sat down and I thought through some things that I'd really like to get done in 2020. So I have Make 9 is probably my biggest one. So this is a challenge that's on Instagram to make 9 things. Now, obviously, these are not the only 9 things I hope to make in 2020, but these are kind of like big projects that require more planning that I'd really like to get done. So you might notice that there is some whiteout happening. When I initially made this, I basically thought that I would do 5 sewing projects and 4 knitting projects. And then I realized that I'm not really a knitter. Like, it's fun, but it's not my preference. And so I whited out all of the knitting stuff and I ended up moving them down here. So I took things from my other category and moved them up because I wanted them to be more of a priority. So I actually have a post of this on Instagram. I don't know if I'll be able to like put the picture in of all of the pieces, but basically I'd like to make the shelbyromper, the ameliedress. I'd like to make either a like bra and underwear set or the Sophie swimsuit, something kind of in that sort of undergarment style, just to learn how to do it. I would like to make Persephonepants, which means I actually have to finish the test versions and like make the real pants. I would like to make the opiumcoat. I'd like to make a pair of the View C Winslow, so that is like the, not the longest, but like the mid shin length, if you will. I'd like to make a striped allwellweekender bag. I'd like to make the amyjumpsuit, and I'd like to make the raspberryrucksack. So these are kind of the big projects that I think they're going to require me learning new skills. They are going to require more time, all of that kind of stuff. So those are my Make 9 for 2020. The other stuff on here, so I would like to work on getting a little bit better at knitting. So one of the things that I found, I had a hard time finding knitting challenges, but one of the ones that I found is it's the DGY challenge. So I think it's Darn Good Yarn. And this is for from, I think, last year, but I was like, I can still use the information and figure it out. So the challenge is basically you knit a 6x6 square in 12 different knit stitches, and then at the end of the year, you stitch them all together and you make a little lap blanket. So I have not labeled mine by month because my idea is whenever I get to them, whenever I finish one of the 6x6 squares, I'll start the next one. So it either will take me a really long time or not that long once I see how much I'm actually going to be knitting in 2020. So that is that particular challenge. I'd also like to participate in Me Made May. I've got a note here that I need to sign up between April 1st and May 1st. And I need to figure out, I've left some space here to figure out what do I want this challenge to mean to me. You know, is it going to be playing around with a 10-piece capsule wardrobe of all Me Made stuff? Is it going to be trying to wear at least one Me Made piece every day in May? What is that actually going to look like? Do I want to take selfies to document it? Do I want to do a blog post? I don't really know, but I'd like to participate in this in some fashion. I also would like to work on the Make Your Stash. So they have it as a challenge that runs March through May, but I'm hoping to work on this kind of throughout the year to kind of get my stash down to a more reasonable level because I have a ton of fabric at this point. So I just wrote a bunch of different things and I'm like, you know what, I think I have stuff in my stash that I can make these items with, and so as I go through and I make them, I will cross them off. So I did fabric weights from scrap paper that I had, or from scrap fabric that I have in my little scrap fabric box, so that was great. I also used this madras fabric that I got from my mom, which is already a scrap of fabric, and I made a tank top, and I realized I could also make a pair of PJ shorts, and then that's basically most of that fabric gone. So really just focusing on taking little pieces of fabric and figuring out what can I make that I will actually use out of this fabric, whether for myself or for other people, you know, who knows. So the last thing on this challenge is the other. So these are other things that I'd really like to work on, and there's honestly a lot of knitting stuff on here. So knitting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 things on here are knitting. And to be perfectly honest, I probably won't do most of them. Maybe eventually I will have more patience for knitting, but I really kind of only want to have one knitting project going at any given point in time because it just takes me so long to do it because I would much rather do other things. I'd much rather sew, or I'd much rather read, or just knitting has not really become a habit at this point. But I also have a couple of sewing things that I want to do that, you know, if I finish the Make 9 or if I finish the Make Your Stash, then these are kind of the next things that I would kind of like to work on. And again, this isn't everything, but this was kind of my focus items, if you will, for 2020. And so as I was kind of going through and planning this, I realized that I really wanted to work on making some more fitted dresses and like really different style dresses. So I ended up printing out this little planner from SEAMWORK, and I didn't use a lot of it. I printed it like small and I actually just stapled it to bind it. So I skipped a lot of the different things because I feel like I have a pretty good style. I have a pretty good color palette. Like that I'm not really concerned about. What I really wanted was, I didn't even do the looks. Like I mix and match all of my clothing, so I didn't even bother to fill that out at this point, but I did want to use it for the project planning pages. So what I ended up doing is I started planning out some of the dresses. This is a romper, but mostly dresses that I really wanted to make. So I've got the romper, the Shelby romper, so I want to make it out of black raw silk. I've written down which version I want to make, the supplies I need, the supplies I have, any like ideas on, you know, if I want to make a muslin or if I am not sure about sizing, that kind of stuff. I've got the ameliedress. So again, little notes and things like that, little sketch of the dress itself. I have the Demeter dress over here. This one I've actually already cut out. I just need to sew it up, which is kind of awesome. And this I did muslin the bodice. No, I did muslin the bodice. Oh my goodness. And I ended up using the madras fabric, and so that is now a PJ top because it fits perfectly, but I just like, you know, needed to be able to test to see if the size that I had chosen would actually work. I've also got the Peggy Pinafore. This is the one that I am currently working on. This is a very fitted bodice, and I've honestly cut it out of the real fabric, and I'm nervous to sew it together because I'm afraid it won't actually fit because I was really close between two sizes. So we'll see how that goes. But this was just a way for me to kind of do a little bit of project planning. I wanted to see if I liked using a project planner like this or if I was really just more comfortable using my planner like this. So it was kind of a test, if you will. So yeah, and then then this one I had written down another one and I hadn't gotten any further in planning it. So those are the notebooks that I have used, that I am using, that I am planning to use, etc. for sort of organizing my sewing projects for this year. It's currently kind of a lot. I think that what I want to do, I ended up doing my 2020 goals in here, but I think at some point I want to move them into my actual sewing planners because it just makes more sense to have them in there. I don't know why I did it in here. Like I have no idea why, but it's in here for now. You know, I don't have to worry about forgetting stuff, but at some point I think I want to have it in my sewing notebooks so that it's just all in one place. So that'll also kind of get things back down to just 2 notebooks rather than spread over a couple. So hopefully that was kind of a helpful update. I also just wanted to show you guys sort of what I have on my docket for sewing for 2020. So if you have any patterns that you personally have sewn or you think that I would be interested in the style of, let me know down below because I always love to learn about new patterns. You know, there are things that I know are my style that I will search for, and then there's other things that I just don't even know to search for. So it's always fun to learn things from other people. So if you have any comments or questions, leave them down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. Hey guys, so if you've made it all the way to the end of this video and are actually watching my end screen and you're not subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate it if you would. There's a little button right there for you to do it. And if you're interested in watching some more of my videos, I have links to 2 of my older videos off to the left there, so you can check those out if you would like to, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.